Okay, hi guys, and welcome to another exclusive video review from a brand extremely close to my heart. As you guys know, I've purchased many Dan Henry watches over the years, and he's come up with another vintage-inspired creation, this time honouring the chronographs of World War II. And as you can imagine, I absolutely leapt at the chance to review them. I'm quite surprised. I've got to hand it to Dan, because I was expecting him never to talk to me again after my very critical review. I purchased this before Christmas. It was malfunctioning, the chronograph. Their customer support was really excellent. So despite being very critical in the review of the 1972 there, obviously I have a duty to my audience to report the truth. They really looked after me, and I'm pleased. Within a couple of, I think like a week or two, came back, they'd fixed the problem, and now it's functioning perfectly fine. Anyway, speaking of which, guys, do like this video if you want to see more reviews and content for free and independent and unsponsored like this. It really does help. Quick wristwatch check. Wearing the Santos Gal B there, absolutely gorgeous. Still loving this watch. I did several videos about it, so have a look back. Dan Henry watches exploded onto the microbrand scene in 2016 to much acclaim, and very much set new standards which the rest of the watch world soon followed. Dan Henry himself is one of, if not the world's most renowned watch collector, hailing from Brazil. His astonishing collection of over 1,600 watches would be the basis of his highly informative and outstanding website, Timeline.watch, a free online library cataloguing all his watches in a very easy to understand, intuitive and extremely useful resource in chronological order. In fact, I use it on almost every video when I'm researching the history section, like the one that you're listening to right now. After providing the world with this wonderful online tool, he took it one step further by creating a collection of affordable, tastefully designed and high-quality watches that pay homage to the vintage styles of the 30s, 40s, 60s and 70s. The genesis of this micro-brand would be the website's navigational layout. He would pick a year, pick several watches from that period, and base a new hybrid from that selection. Having such a gigantic collection of watches accessible to him would give him hands-on experience and an edge over all his competition, resulting in a finished product that would be the envy of almost every other microbrand out there. The aim, much like his website, was simple: the democratization of watches, as many of the watches that he took inspiration from were either super rare and thus expensive, or simply too old and fragile for normal everyday use. No matter if you love or loathe Dan's work, one cannot deny his effect on the watch world. Fast forward to 2022, and even big brands like Omega and Swatch have adopted his style of taking legendary watches and making affordable alternatives of them. Diameter of 41 millimeters. The height is 13.5. Lug to lug just a smidgen over 48 there, and then lug width. Sapphire crystal for the materials, anti-reflective treatment. Pretty sure it's on the inside. We have a stainless steel case. It's entirely brushed, as you can see. The only exception being that beautiful case back, which we'll return to in a high polish to obviously further contrast. And I have to say, the quality is definitely a step up. It's just absolutely immaculate. So great to see a return to form on the quality there. Straps are really interesting. These look like, or rather reminiscent to, the Rios, if you recall the, I think it's the 1939. Instead of a taper, we have that little step. Very German in style. I'm sure Dan must have noticed. Made out of very high quality chèvre goat leather. The little bolt action spring bars are very easy to change out. Really nice, substantial, but yet has a pleasing fluidity. I love the texture. This one is definitely my favorite. This one actually reminds me, looks like Hugo, actually, the Hugo's skin there. But anyway, usually with more affordable watches, the strap is an afterthought, but Dan always puts incredible attention to detail. A signed buckle, just bog standard there. In terms of luminescence, it is Superlunima Nova. We'll return to that later. Inside is the Miyota 6S20. It's a quartz, Japanese made, of course, with a smooth motion. I think it's like a 4-beat to that seconds hand. If I engage it, you'll see what I mean. So this for the first 30 seconds, this is 1/10 of a second register. It gives the illusion of a mechanical watch. It is a little bit choppy, but it's better than just a solid tick, so I really like that. We have the V-shaped compacts layout there. It has a very impressive battery life of 4 years, which is extremely long, especially considering it can run up to an hour a day and still keep to that 4-year battery life. So great solid movement. It's about plus or minus 20 seconds a month. So excellent accuracy, as you come to expect. Very economical. I'm not sure if there's an end of life indicator. I did look at the Miyota website. I wish they'd state these kind of things on their website. And actually the bottom, you don't have to stop start. You can just immediately reset it. Kind of nifty if you need to time something in a jiffy and you're already recording something. So this is a 60-minute chronograph with the minutes at the 9, and then at the 6 we have seconds for the main time. The water resistance is 50 meters, which, you know, for chronograph is pretty typical, because of course there are more points of entry. It would have been nice to have a little bit more, but that's typically what you come to see with chronographs. We have a 12-hour bezel, bidirectional by the way, and ratcheted to 12 positions. So you can set it very quickly and easily to whatever hour and track a second time zone. Again, we'll talk a bit more about the bezel later. It does feel extremely solid, I have to say, and it falls when it clicks into position nice and solidly. I really like that. Now, these are not numbered on the back. I don't know if he's sent me prototypes, because usually he sells, like this is the 1945, he'll sell, you know, 1,945 and number them. But this is something I'm gonna have to look into afterwards, because obviously with my 1962 that I own, I absolutely adore this watch. This is numbered and it has sold out, which I think is quite important because it protects the value of the watch. So I wonder if Dan is changing his business model. I guess we have to wait and find out. In terms of the legibility of the dial, it's very precise. The dial work, which is done in Korea, so you've got a Japanese movement, Chinese made case, and the dial work is done in Korea. It is amazingly crisp and precise and accurate, so you can actually use all of these complications. The design of this watch is unequivocally its most interesting aspect. It's based on the 1941 Jardur Bezelmeter, one of the most underrated and revered chronographs of World War II, but also famous for being worn by Robert De Niro in the excellent and equally underappreciated espionage thriller Ronin from 1998. Jardur was a New York-based watchmaker and importer of Swiss chronographs. After creating their signature Jardur model, the Bezelmeter, they began selling their watches to the United States Army and Navy Post Exchanges, or PXs. While Jardur was never officially commissioned by any particular military branch, it had an extremely strong following with many aviators and military personnel. As with all aviation watches, we see the typical complications we expect to see. The dial layout and bezel are very faithful to the Jardur, using the same contrasting black and cherry red pops of color, as well as on the telemeter, which is the inner scale, and the 12 o'clock bezel triangle indicator. This, if you've missed previous episodes, is a complication very popular during wartime because you can make distance and time calculations relevant to artillery, and obviously especially useful in aircraft bombers. The main print of the dial and tachymeter or tachometer is in a rich mustardy faux patina that matches the cathedral handset. These hands were also inspired by cockpit instruments designed by Smiths and Bendix that were commonly found in onboard timing equipment you'd see in the Spitfire. Aside from being classically beautiful, this handset is highly effective in being easy and quick to distinguish hours from minutes, and the exaggerated length of the main chronoseconds reaches nicely to the periphery of the dial, giving an extremely precise reading. Dan Henry, like the 1962 Sandwich dial, has gone one step further and added applied numerals at the 12, 3 and 9, which is a nice little bit of distinguishing design from Jardur. With this being a pilot watch of the 1940s, the screwback caseback features a stunningly detailed and highly polished raised relief engraving of the greatest fighter plane of that age, the Supermarine Spitfire. Very fitting indeed, and sumptuously contrasted by the bead-blasted finish. There are 4 versions available in total, either with or without date, and 2 with silver sub-dials. Personally, I prefer the all-black dial, as it reminds me of the previously reviewed German-made Hanhart Pioneer 1 Tachytele, itself a reissue of the 1930s classic military chronograph. The bezel does a good job of recreating that Weems-style look and feel, first pioneered by Longines and later adapted by many brands like Amiga, among many others, that was so memorably depicted in the Capolavoro Dunkirk movie from 2017. So let's talk a little bit about the negatives. Well, the first thing I'll point out is the poor loom orientation due to the lack of markers or numerals on the southern section of the dial. I do feel it suffers a little bit. However, the hands are absolutely outstanding because of these very easy to distinguish shapes. Also, I'm not fond of the 22mm lug width. I think it's too overbearing for this scale of watch. This is what you typically see with Navi timers. I'm not sure of the lug width in relation to the size of the watch it obviously takes inspiration from, but it was 37mm, so I'm guessing it was smaller. Another big negative for me is there's still a ghost position there, and there still is the ghost wheel, so that was rather disappointing. I do feel generally it is a smidgen oversized. I think 38 would have been much better and much more kind of period correct. As I said, the original was 37mm, which, interestingly enough, in the 1940s was considered absolutely huge. I would take this over the recent Jardur, which was restarted, by the way, as a brand in 2012. Their modern Bezelmeter, they've made it 43mm, so actually this is closer to the original than what Jardur are doing themselves. This is why I've brought back or borrowed the 37 here. I think it should have been this size. It does feel a little bit kind of samey. I think Dan Henry has been a little bit, when it comes to the chronographs, too dependent on their quartz or mecha quartz movements. It's not really Dan's fault. I would pay, for example, for a mechanical version of the 1962 or even the 72 that I love there. It's going to push up the price 1,000, 2,000. If you go Swiss, it's going to be 3 grand for a 7750. Another slight disadvantage is that despite it being a leather strap monster, it's not going to work with more contemporary styles. For example, I have my Wrist Candy Watch Club rubber strap. This, in my opinion, is a little bit too modern for the likes of this 1945. Yeah, it will work great with NATO straps, probably even a mesh Milanese. I think it could look really spiffing on that. But generally, yeah, it's more for leather straps. Not a big negative, but I had to mention it because I think, you know, compared to the 1962 here, which is the ultimate definition of a strap monster, monochrome, works with whatever, NATO, Perlon, rubber as you see here, leather, the works, you name it, kippers, knickers. World War II has shaped the modern world beyond all other historic events in human history. We saw the birth of modern computing with Alan Turing and his code-breaking machines, man's first flights using jet technology, and the terrifying start of the nuclear age, just to name a few examples. Not to mention all the political, cultural, and economic effects that still very much overshadow the world as we know it today. It's somewhat sad that we as a species need a war to accelerate technology. We obviously have not changed as much as we think from Kubrick's weaponizing monkey in the movie 2001, but I digress. One good thing about World War II was from a horological perspective. It was perhaps the most crucial era for the need and use of traditional mechanical timepieces. The lives of millions of people depended on the accuracy and precision of watches. Moments like this in history are few and far between, not since John Harrison's chronometers of the 18th century or Bullova's Accutron technology of the 1960s that put men on the moon has mankind relied so much on the power of timekeeping. So it's no wonder that the watches of World War II are so highly sought after and desired by collectors. The main problem is, of course, The best examples are either lost in battle or so old now you simply cannot use and enjoy them for every day. Dan has once again succeeded in creating exactly what he set out to do, a fun, super high quality for the money, well executed and actually practical watch with some useful complications. I love the overall elegant design, and the charm of the caseback fills me with a childish, giddy joy, the same kind of feeling I get when I unbox a new die-cast model from Corgi. While not exactly revolutionary, one could say Dan's methods are a little old hat now, especially considering the big boys like Amiga are doing it with their Moonswatch. I also feel in a post-Moonswatch world, Dan will have to step up his game in order to continue his domination as the king of vintage-inspired affordable watches. So, in conclusion, he does remain a micro-brand for the watch or the true watch enthusiast. This is by an enthusiast for enthusiasts. And I love the fact that he's continuing to democratize more obscure watches, which definitely this is a lot more obscure than, for example, the Evil Nina or the Porsche design that obviously inspired the 72. Not many people know about Jardur, so that's really cool. It's not perfect, but still pure class. Will I be pulling the trigger myself? Well, no, I do prefer the black, I have to say, but I'm very happy with my 2 Dan Henrys here. This is enough for me. Having said that, if he was to do something a bit like the Weems bezel Amiga from the Dunkirk movie, manual wind, very simple, I would absolutely jump on it. I would like to own a mechanical watch from Dan Henry at some point. But yeah, ultimately it just lacks that magic spark that these two, I feel, and actually that one does as well. Anyway guys, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your opinions down below. What do you think of these new Dan Henry watches? Questions, all the rest of it. And a massive thank you to Dan for lending these in. Good luck to him. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Onwards and upwards. Ciao.